So heading into the final month, perhaps the second last month of the format, I figured that basically it would be a good time to maybe take a look at all the decks and stuff that I've topped this season, that I've done well, this format, I mean, rather than season. So I've managed to compile this big, huge spreadsheet, and it took a lot of work to try and figure out everything. So really, before I start, my sources have been the Konami blog for most of it, although some of it has been pretty lackluster. I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. Concho Store Facebook group on Facebook, and they have a lot of beautiful pie charts and stuff that they put up, and I'll maybe have some of them playing in the background as I talk. But yeah, they managed to collect most of the top 32 breakdowns for basically every one of these events except Sacramento. So shout outs to them, and finally shout outs to Simo, who did help me out a lot and basically linked me towards most of the breakdowns and stuff. So with that out of the way, before we begin, I would also like to be very, very absolutely 100% clear before we begin. Tiers do not exist. They are a player invented sort of, measurement of Yu-Gi-Oh! They are a player invented analysis of the game. It's simply, there is no official term for it. There is no official recognition of tier lists. So this is completely opinion based. And I just wanted to make that very clear. So I don't want anyone to get upset or get angry because your deck didn't make the tier list. That's because I have approached this in a certain way using only the numbers. I have my own personal opinion of how a tier list should be broken down, and I have made a video on it in the past. And it actually completely contradicts a lot of the conclusions I've drawn from this spreadsheet, just because of the fact that I feel that it was, it's quite hard to develop a tier list, because in my personal opinion, I would consider regional tops to be tier 2. But for the purposes of this video, across 6 total events, major events, having to try and incorporate regional tops alongside premier event tops and then find some kind of formula that averages out those numbers and then balances them, I just felt it was just way too much work involved that, just in the end to conclude whether or not, Ritual Beast is potentially less shit than Dark World this format. I just figured that it was, it just wasn't worth it. I figured that I would try and include it in some degree, but I'll talk a little bit about that in detail as we go along. Now, so there's a lot of numbers on screen. So I've got all the number of tops of the various decks from the event, and then the total amount of tops across the entire format so far. So for Magicians, it's unsurprising that they had the most number of tops. They had 79 tops total, and an average top rate of 13 tops per event, which is pretty crazy, and that would absolutely put them high up on this tier list. But the problem is trying to actually find the correct thresholds and the correct sort of cutoffs for where you would put the tiers. And again, the way I've done this is very subjective, and it's a very opinion based, and you might have your own way to deconstruct this. And if you do have your own way to deconstruct this, these numbers, then please do let me know how you've done it, because I know for a fact, 100% absolute for a fact, like my way of deconstructing this is not going to be the best way, the correct way, but it's just what I have found to be the best approach for the purposes of just having so much data. Like, just having this amount of data at your disposal is just really hard to work with. So yeah, now deconstructing this list, I've decided that in order for something to be tier 0, I've classed it at around about 80% of tops. So that would equate to, across these events, a number of about 153 total tops in order for a deck to have been classified as tier 0. So tier 0, Magicians fall short of that by a huge degree and a huge margin. So 80% of the tops would be around about tier 0, so Magicians don't fall under that category. Tier 0.5, it's hard to really classify, I believe. If we were to take a look at something like the pie chart here and see, I would say that for something to realistically be tier 0.5, like a 2-deck format, we probably would have needed True Draco and Magicians to take up about 2/3 of the spots alone. So Draco not really pulling its weight for this to really be called a tier 0.5 format. So I've decided that the best way to classify it would be to have the tier 1 decks to be Draco and Magician, of course. So that's without a doubt, and they are tier 1 decks, this format. But then it gets a little bit tricky trying to figure out, where anything else could maybe slot into this point. So I figured that for tier 1, we would have Magician and Draco, obviously. But then I decided that, judging by the numbers that we have here, I think roughly, we look at Trickstar, for example, has 3 tops per event as at an average. Some higher than others, some less than others. And I think that to be able to top that consistently and that regularly, alongside the power of Magicians and True Draco, I felt like it was probably best that Trickstar be included in the tier 1 category as well, because I felt like something around about 3 tops per event, it doesn't sound like a lot, but across 6 events, that's a long time. I figured that was maybe probably the correct cutoff point to have tier 1. So I've decided that tier 1 for this format would be Magician, True Draco, and Trickstar. And I've cheated a little bit here with Lightsworn variants. So the reason for that is that Dino variants and Lightsworn variants fall short of the cutoff point of the 3 tier of the 3 tops per event. However, it's kind of strange, but the Dino variants all play Lightsworn cards, and it's hard to really not justify that being a Lightsworn deck to an extent, like as an engine at the very least. So I don't have mathematical proof to really put those together. I mean, I guess you could just add up the total tops of them together. But then again, some of the Dino variants didn't all play Lightsworn cards, although most of them did, of course. So I figured it would be fair to probably group them together alongside Lightsworn, and I figured that Lightsworn variant overall, just as a title, Lightsworn variant, I believe that would be tier 1 as well for this format. So I've decided that the tier 1 decks for this format are as follows: Magician, True Draco, Trickstar, and then Lightsworn variants. And then after that we have 1 top per event is what I've decided to class tier 1 as. So anything that's averaging 1 top per event is going to be classified in the tier 1.5 category. So this is where the Dino variants do get ahead, and they are definitely, even without the help of the Trickstar, without the Lightsworn variants, they are definitely tier 1.5. Very close to that tier 1.5 level was Zephyra, getting an average top of 0.8 tops per event. So just missing the average of 1 top per event. So I would still maybe, perhaps to an extent, obviously a bit of bias, I would class Zephyr around about the tier 1.5 mark. After that, I decided that a solid tier 2 would be multiple tops for an event. So any deck that has topped multiple times throughout this format, even if it's not 1 average per event, I've decided that if it has topped a few times, then it would probably be round about the 0.5 average top rate. So something like Metalfoes variants, ABC, Burning Abyss, Paleo, Invoke. I've decided to class those as tier 2. So those are the tier 2 decks for this event, in my opinion. After that, we just have the anomalies and the kind of one-off decks that just have 1 single top and have managed to scrape it through. Spiral and Stun, they both got 2 tops, but is it really worth putting them round about the tier 2.5? World Chalice as well is a very bizarre one, because it feels strange calling World Chalice tier 2.5 when it managed to win an event. But I think it goes without saying, if it's not consistently performing across the format, then is it really tier 1? Even despite the fact that won an event. So I mean, that's up for debate. Let me know what you think. And finally, just no top. So if your deck isn't mentioned, then you are playing a tier 3 deck. Quite simply, if your deck isn't mentioned here, then tier 3 is what would be. So that's just basically non-premier event level decks. I couldn't really think of maybe there's like a tier 2.75 category where if you have a regional top but no premier event tops, it would be included there. I just feel like if we start, dealing with the sort of, does it have a regional top but no premier event top, but it has like the potential to win a regional but can't win but it can't actually make it to top cut of a tier of a premier event. Where do we put this? I just feel like there's no point in really trying to debate that. Just shove it in the tier 3 section. Like Ritual Beasts, they could probably get some regional tops. Can they top a premier event? Maybe not. It's like a loser's bracket, really. And I just feel like it wasn't really important and doesn't really need to be included in this video. But hey, so yeah, a lot of work involved in this and a lot of brainstorming. But like I said, I definitely don't think that this is perhaps the best way to tier it. But based on what I've seen here and the results I've had, you know, I feel like this was really the best I could do in terms of tiering these decks. So let me know what you think down below and if you would categorize this differently. And until next time, farewell.